Welcome. If you're joining us today, you are ready to have a really crucial conversation about longevity, about movement, and, the absolute quality of your life after 55.
We're so glad you're here for this.
We are. This is a specialized discussion, and it's based on our most recent findings in health and aging. This isn't about, accepting decline.
Not at all.
It's about getting to the truth and really understanding the precise mechanics of your body so you can, override what so many people mistakenly call the inevitable.
Mm.
Okay, let's unpack this. Joint pain is so often dismissed, with a shrug as just wear and tear.
Mm-hmm. The old machine finally giving out.
Exactly. But our data shows something far more complex and I think far more hopeful. We've actually isolated specific biological and lifestyle triggers.
Right. And these triggers don't just cause a bit of discomfort.
No, they actually accelerate the whole process of degradation. And the exciting news, the really good news, is that these triggers aren't predetermined. They are, at their core, fixable.
And that's our mission here.
It is. Our mission is to give you the precise information you need to reclaim your full range of movement.
That's absolutely right. Our goal today is to move definitively beyond those damaging myths.
Yeah.
This ingrained idea that once you cross a certain age threshold...
That's it. Game over for your knees and hips.
Precisely. That creaking knees, stiff backs, and aching hips are simply your destiny. We have synthesized, extensive ongoing research to give you a research-backed understanding of what truly causes this discomfort.
And it's not just about pain management.
No, we are not just aiming to help you manage the pain you currently feel. We're here to provide the roadmap for you to regain and then maintain free and, joyful movement at 70, at 80, even into your 90s.
That's the goal.
It is. The critical difference between painful, limited mobility and full, free movement, It truly lies in applying this knowledge.
And we know this discussion is, it's highly relevant to almost everyone listening in this age category. You have to start by acknowledging the high prevalence.
It's staggering.
Over 50% of adults over 65 experience regular, noticeable joint pain. So that statistic makes it common, yes.
But common doesn't mean it's normal or necessary.
That is the most profound finding from our work. It is absolutely empirically not inevitable. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes showing you the distinction between what is statistically common and what is biologically avoidable through targeted, informed intervention.
And we need to jump straight into the microscopic mechanics. I think once you understand the underlying structural shifts happening on a cellular level, the solutions we're going to propose for prevention and reversal, they'll make immediate intuitive sense.
Let's get granular then. We have to talk about the primary structure that has been diligently working for you every single day since birth.
Your articular cartilage.
Your cartilage. If you just stop and think about the sheer amount of stress that structure has absorbed, walking a lifetime of miles, climbing stairs,
bending down to tie a shoe, lifting groceries, thousands and thousands of repetitions.
And it has performed as this perfect silent cushion. But our research confirms that around the age of 55, a significant biological shift occurs.
Yeah.
It's a quiet process.
Very quiet. It's been brewing for years, only now it's starting to express itself physically as pain or stiffness.
So what's the first thing that happens?
The first, and I'd say the most foundational finding, involves something incredibly simple: water.
Water.
A lot of people visualize cartilage as this firm, rubbery solid, like a piece of plastic, but that is fundamentally incorrect. Cartilage, your beautiful, smooth joint shock absorber, is approximately 80% water.
80%. That's a huge number.
It's staggering. And this level of hydration isn't incidental. It is the absolute key to its function as a cushion and protector. This water isn't just, loose liquid. It's tightly bound within a matrix of specialized proteins.
Okay, so proteins that hold water.
Exactly. They're called proteoglycans and glycosaminoglycans, but you can just think of them as molecular sponges. Their job is to draw water in and hold it under pressure.
So if the function relies on these protein molecules holding water, are we basically just talking about localized dehydration on a microscopic level? And if that's the case, does simply drinking more water solve the whole issue, or is there another piece to this puzzle?
That's a crucial distinction, and it's a great question. Simple hydration is absolutely necessary, but it doesn't solve the structural degradation entirely.
Wow.
Because the problem is twofold. First, yes, the body often does become chronically dehydrated as we age. Water availability goes down. But second, and this is key, the protein architecture itself, that molecular sponge, begins to degrade.
Ah, so the sponge itself is falling apart.
Precisely. We use the analogy of the drying sponge, and it's a very powerful comparison. Think about a brand new, wet kitchen sponge. You can squeeze it completely flat, right?
Right, and it bounces right back.
It immediately rebounds, perfectly absorbing the shock. That's your healthy, fully hydrated cartilage. But as we age, and due to decades of subtle neglect, poor nutrition, and hormonal shifts, that protein matrix starts to lose its ability to hold water.
So the percentage drops.
The water percentage slowly drops. And what happens when a physical sponge is dry? It becomes thin, brittle, inflexible. It can't compress and rebound anymore.
It just cracks.
It fractures or cracks under pressure.
And that loss of structural integrity, that dehydration, it has immediate painful consequences.
It does. That loss of hydration means a proportional, severe loss of shock absorption. The cushion gets thinner, it gets more brittle, and the protective gap between the bones starts to shrink.
Which leads to what you actually feel.
Yes, a painful consequence you feel. The bones starting to rub or grind against each other. That deep, sharp, or sometimes just dull discomfort is your body sending an alert. It's saying the structural integrity of your water-based cushioning has been fundamentally compromised.
And this process is silent for a long time.
For decades, sometimes, until that critical threshold of water loss is breached.
This is where it gets really interesting for me, because it's not just a physical problem of water loss, it's a structural and a biological breakdown happening at the same time.
A two-pronged attack.
It's exactly.
The second mechanism involves protein failure. The entire resilient architecture of cartilage relies on vital structural proteins, and the main one is collagen.
Right, collagen.
You can think of collagen as the rebar holding the concrete together in a building. It provides the tensile strength and the organization needed for those little molecular sponges to hold all that water.
So what happens to that essential rebar over time?
As we get into our mid-50s and beyond, the body just starts producing less of these necessary maintenance and repair proteins. It's a common biological effect of aging.
So production slows down.
It slows way down. And what's worse, the existing collagen, that rebar, is breaking down at an accelerated rate. It's breaking down faster than your body can synthesize and rebuild it.
So you're losing on both ends.
You are. Imagine trying to patch a huge roof during a storm with just one repairman, but 10 new sections of the structure are crumbling every hour. The rate of degradation simply outpaces the body's repair capacity.
And that leads to, what, microscopic tears?
Yes, microscopic tears, structural weakening, fraying, all of this just further compounds the vulnerability that's already been caused by the dehydration.
And then something incredibly frustrating happens next. The immune system, which should be our protector, gets involved in a way that actually makes things worse.
It does.
Shouldn't the immune system be protecting the joint?
Yeah.
Maybe helping to repair those tears?
Ideally, yes. But the immune system is hyper-responsive. When structural damage occurs, when those proteins break down or tiny shards of irritated tissue are released into the joint fluid, the body's immune system often misreads the situation.
How so?
It correctly identifies that there's damaged tissue, but it sees it as foreign or like infected material. So it launches a massive localized inflammatory response.
That's an overreaction.
A huge overreaction. This response floods the joint with chemical messengers known as cytokines and prostaglandins. Now, these chemicals are supposed to bring healing resources to the area, but they simultaneously trigger your pain receptors, and critically, they contain enzymes that actively degrade the remaining surrounding cartilage tissue.
Oh, wow. So the cure is actually part of the problem.
It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, a localized, chronic, low-grade inflammatory state. It's truly a scenario where your immune system is, mistakenly attacking your joints like they're the enemy.
And that chronic inflammation is what turns the microscopic damage into that persistent, debilitating pain.
That's the biological component that takes it from a silent problem to a very loud one.
Okay, so we've established the core problem, structural failure, driven by dehydration and collagen breakdown, which is then made intensely painful by the body's own hyperactive inflammatory response.
Right.
Now we have to ask the critical question that our listeners really need answered. If everyone is aging and everyone's cartilage is 80% water, why do some people hit 55 and stay highly mobile while others are already in serious, debilitating pain?
What's the difference?
What accounts for that massive difference in outcomes?
That massive difference is the trigger factor. Aging is a process, but pain is often a reaction to specific, controllable accelerators.
So things we can actually do something about.
Exactly. Our research points directly to several common triggers that most people either overlook entirely or just dismiss as unrelated to their joint health. These are the accelerants that turn minor, expected, manageable wear into significant premature degradation.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture?
If we connect it to the bigger picture, these lifestyle and dietary triggers are what turn a small, repairable tear into widespread structural failure much, much earlier than biology would dictate.
So understanding and eliminating these triggers, that's the first step.
It's the foundational step in regaining control over your mobility.
Let's start with what we control 3 or 4 times a day, what we put into our bodies. Everyone knows diet is important, but we need to focus specifically on refined sugar and its direct destructive impact on joint health. Most people connect sugar with, heart disease or weight gain, but the mechanical damage it does to our structural tissue is often just ignored.
It's insidious. The mechanism is both chemical and systemic. When you consume excess refined sugar, it sets off a cascade of inflammatory chemicals throughout the body.
The same ones we were just talking about.
The very same ones that fuel joint pain. But sugar does more than just cause general inflammation. It causes direct structural damage through a process called glycation.
Glycation. Okay, that's a term our listeners really need to understand. How does sugar physically change the joint structure?
Glycation happens when sugar molecules in your bloodstream permanently bond to protein molecules like collagen. This process creates what are known as advanced glycation end products, or mercifully, AGs for short.
AGs, okay.
And these AGs are highly rigid and highly inflammatory molecules.
So they stiffen things up.
Think of healthy collagen as like soft, new leather. It's flexible, it's resilient, it can stretch and recover. When sugar molecules link up to the collagen fibers in your cartilage, those fibers become rigid and cross-linked.
Like old leather.
It's like turning that new leather into old, brittle, cracking leather that just snaps instead of bending. This AG accumulation reduces the elasticity of the collagen framework.
Accelerating the structural failure we talked about.
Exactly. And crucially, AGEs trigger the body to produce more of those specific inflammatory chemicals, the cytokines, that actively increase and worsen your joint pain. So if your body is already trying to manage inflammation in your knees,
you're just pouring gasoline on the fire.
You are constantly pouring gasoline on that small, localized fire. It prevents healing, and it guarantees that the pain will persist.
That is a critical link. Sugar doesn't just make you gain weight. It actively stiffens and degrades the very structures that give you flexibility. But the inflammation doesn't stop there. This is where we introduce a surprising food group that can be a personal trigger for some people: the nightshades.
This is a fascinating area because it is so highly individual, and it's often overlooked in general nutrition advice. Nightshades include really common foods.
These we eat all the time.
Right. Bell peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, goji berries, even white potatoes. And while these are safe and healthy for the vast majority of people, they're full of valuable vitamins.
But for some.
Our research confirms that for a small, susceptible subset of individuals, these foods contain specific compounds that can cause trouble.
And what are those compounds doing?
They contain compounds known as glycoalkaloids, primarily one called solanine. For certain sensitive individuals, these alkaloids are suspected of interfering with nerve function and increasing systemic inflammation within the joints.
So they can make arthritis symptoms worse.
They can significantly aggravate them, leading to a noticeable spike in stiffness and discomfort, sometimes just a few hours after you eat them.
Okay, so since this is an individual response, not a blanket don't eat tomatoes rule, what's the best protocol for someone who suspects potatoes might be contributing to their chronic joint stiffness?
The research suggests a highly effective self-test. It requires discipline, but zero guesswork. We strongly recommend a strict elimination of all nightshades for a full week, maybe 7 to 10 days.
And you have to read labels carefully.
Absolutely. The key is to assess your baseline pain and stiffness before the test, and then track it diligently during the elimination phase. If you notice a significant decrease in morning stiffness or afternoon aching after 10 days,
you found a personal trigger.
You found a personal inflammatory trigger. And the second, equally important step is the reintroduction phase.
Right.
After the elimination period, you reintroduce one nightshade food, say tomatoes, in a significant quantity, a big salad, a slice of pizza, and then you wait 48 hours. If the stiffness comes back.
That food is a trigger for you.
It's a trigger for you. The key here isn't blanket elimination based on fear. It's individualized, evidence-based assessment. You have to listen closely to your body's response.
Okay, Moving beyond diet, let's talk about how we move, or crucially, how we don't move. This next finding is often shocking because it is a complete paradox in joint health. And that finding is that being sedentary is often just as detrimental, if not more so, than the joint overuse we associate with, decades of being an athlete.
This brings us directly back to the chemistry and the delivery system inside the joint capsule itself. That capsule is filled with something called synovial fluid.
Okay.
This fluid is the joint's lubricant, its coolant, and its nutrient delivery system. It's what nourishes that critical 80% water cartilage.
But how does it get around?
Well, this fluid doesn't have its own pump, unlike our blood, which is circulated by the heart. Synovial fluid relies entirely on physical movement.
On the joint itself moving.
On the gentle, cyclical compression and release of the joint to circulate properly. When the joint has been pressed, waste is squeezed out. When it's released, fresh fluid, rich in nutrients and oxygen, diffuses into the cartilage matrix.
So movement is required to facilitate that nutrient exchange. Without it, the system literally starves.
Exactly. When there's insufficient movement, when you adopt a highly sedentary lifestyle, sitting for hours at a time, day after day, that joint fluid stagnates, it stops circulating.
We call this starving cartilage.
We do, and it means the cartilage isn't getting the steady stream of vital nutrients it desperately needs to repair microdamage, nor is it able to maintain that crucial 80% hydration level. Lack of movement essentially leaves the cartilage slowly starving, dehydrating, and accumulating metabolic waste all at once.
So you have to move consistently throughout the day.
Even with small movements, just to feed your cartilage and flush out those toxins.
That is an incredibly powerful, almost frightening visual. Starving your own joints just by sitting still for too long. But then we have to address the flip side.
The overuse accumulation.
What about those of us who have been consistently highly active? The lifelong runner or the marathon biker?
For those individuals with a history of high-impact activity, decades of pavement pounding from running, the constant stop-start and lateral pivots from sports like soccer or tennis.
Or demanding physical jobs?
Right. Construction, concrete work. Specific joints sustain repeated, concentrated microtrauma and wear. These are high cumulative stress loads.
But the body is so good at repairing itself when we're young. Why does that process suddenly fail after 55?
It comes down to two factors: the sheer volume of the cumulative damage and the profound slowing of the cellular repair process itself.
So the repair crew gets smaller and slower.
That's a great way to put it. The body is amazing at repairing microtrauma, but here's the critical distinction we found. After 55, something called cellular senescence plays a larger role. Our cells, including the ones that maintain cartilage, they become less efficient at repair, they replicate slower, and they clear out waste less effectively.
A repair deficit.
A repair deficit. And that means the microtrauma that was manageable at 30 suddenly accumulates rapidly and becomes a real problem at 60. The microtears build up, structural integrity weakens, and the painful symptoms of osteoarthritis finally show up, driven by habits that were once considered healthy.
So it's not about stopping movement.
No, it's about radically adjusting the type of movement to align with the body's reduced repair capacity.
Okay, let's pivot now to the load factor.
Yeah.
This is one of the most quantifiable and, frankly, devastating accelerants of joint degradation, especially in the hips and knees.
Yes.
We all sort of know that excess weight plays a role, but our research allows us to quantify the true scale of the damage.
And this is a finding that resonates immediately with people experiencing knee pain because it's just simple physics. We rely on the multiplier rule.
The multiplier rule.
Every single extra pound of body weight you carry places 5 pounds of pressure or compressive force onto your knees when you're standing, walking, or climbing stairs. This is not a guess. It's mechanical reality.
That 1 to 5 multiplier changes the entire calculation when you think about all the steps you take in a day.
It absolutely multiplies the problem. Let's use a simple example from our research modeling. Being just 20 pounds over your ideal healthy weight means you are asking your knees to absorb 100 pounds of extra compressive force.
With every single step.
With every single step you take. Imagine thousands of steps in a day, multiplied over a decade. Joints were simply not designed to manage that kind of chronic excessive load. The cartilage compresses faster, the water gets squeezed out more aggressively, and the overall structural lifespan is just dramatically shortened.
So reducing that load.
It is one of the single most powerful and effective interventions you can make.
However, there's an often overlooked factor that provides a ray of hope, even if that load factor is hard to address immediately. And that's the critical stabilizing role of muscle, or muscle loss.
This is where we focus on stabilization, which is often more critical than the sheer load itself. After the age of 50, there's a natural progressive loss of muscle mass and strength. The clinical term is sarcopenia.
It's a biological reality.
It is, but its impact on joint health is often ignored. When your muscles weaken, especially the major supportive muscle groups like your quads, hamstrings, glutes, and crucially your core, the joint has to compensate for that lack of support.
So the muscles are meant to be the body's primary suspension system, its shock absorbers. And when they fail,
Exactly. When the surrounding muscles weaken, the joints, the ligaments, the tendons, these passive structures have to work much, much harder to stabilize your body during movement. This leads to asymmetrical strain, microtrauma, and dramatically accelerated wear inside the joint capsule itself.
you're forcing the bone and cartilage to handle forces they were never meant to sustain.
Correct. This reliance on the joint rather than the muscle is why we see such accelerated damage.
But there's good news here.
The beautiful, empowering takeaway, which our research strongly reinforces, is that strengthening the muscles around the joint can dramatically reduce your joint pain and improve function, even if the joint itself already has damage.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. Building up the support system to take the load off the compromised cartilage, that is the single most crucial element of recovery and longevity.
That is really empowering information. It means you don't have to wait for some miracle cure for the cartilage. You can start fixing the external support system today.
You can.
So we've thoroughly identified the mechanics: dehydration, protein failure, inflammation, and the accelerants inflammatory diet, being sedentary, excessive load, muscle loss. Now let's move to the solution. What do we actually do about it?
Based on these insights, our research offers a really clear, structured path forward. We've condensed our recommendations into what we call the 5 pillars of joint longevity.
Okay.
5 critical, targeted areas where making immediate, consistent changes can make a massive, measurable difference in your daily comfort and your long-term mobility.
All right, pillar 1. Let's start with the simplest, most fundamental intervention, the one that's often the most neglected.
Especially as we age.
Pillar 1, targeted hydration.
As simple as it sounds, this is a direct, immediate intervention that addresses that core structural problem we discussed: cartilage dehydration.
Right, the 80% water.
Your joints are 80% water. They require adequate, consistent water intake to maintain that optimal lubrication and the plumpness of the remaining cartilage. And if you wait until you feel thirsty,
You're already behind.
you are already well behind the curve. Your internal systems are already rationing that vital water. Not drinking enough makes that structural problem significantly worse. It accelerates the brittle sponge effect.
And we should be clear. We're talking about water.
We are specifically talking about pure water, not coffee, not tea, not sugary drinks, which often have a net dehydrating effect. The goal should be consistent, steady intake throughout the whole day.
Okay, simple enough. Pillar 2.
Pillar 2 is intentional movement, but with a critical qualification. It has to be low impact.
This is the direct countermeasure to the starving cartilage trigger we talked about. You need movement to feed the joints, but you can't add insult to injury by pounding them.
Exactly. The focus here must be entirely on maintaining that necessary circulation of synovial fluid without introducing destructive, repetitive shock forces. We want smooth, gentle compression and release.
So what does that look like in practice, especially for someone who might already be in pain? Can we get specific?
The 3 recommended activities that rise to the top of our data are swimming, walking, and cycling. Swimming, especially in a heated pool, removes the gravitational load entirely. It lets your hips, knees, shoulders just move through their full range of motion without any compressive stress.
It's a perfect way to feed the joints.
It is. Walking is also excellent, provided you maintain proper form and you listen to your pain signals immediately. A gentle, consistent walk on a soft surface is ideal.
And cycling.
Cycling, especially stationary cycling with an upright posture, provides highly fluid, non-weight-bearing rotation to the knees and hips. It activates the surrounding muscles without that impact force.
And what about stretching?
We cannot overstate the importance of integrating stretching, flexibility work, gentle yoga, or Tai Chi. These activities are essential for improving the functional flexibility of the muscles and tendons around the joint. They keep the joint moving freely through its entire range of motion, which ensures that nutrient-rich fluid gets into every corner of the joint capsule.
Okay, moving from movement to fuel. Pillar 3 is anti-inflammatory nutrition. This is where we consciously use diet as medicine to counteract that systemic inflammation we talked about.
Absolutely. We have to transition from a diet that fuels inflammation to one that intentionally selects foods that actively reduce it. And the most powerful dietary intervention involves essential fatty acids.
Omega-3s.
Top of the list are foods rich in omega-3s. Cold water fish like salmon, sardines, mackerel, or high-quality supplements. These compounds are potent anti-inflammatory agents. We also strongly advocate for dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, and colorful berries, like blueberries and raspberries. They're packed with antioxidants that directly neutralize the damaging free radicals and inflammatory chemicals in your system.
We also have data showing the effectiveness of specific spices. What's the evidence there?
We have substantial data supporting the anti-inflammatory power of spices like turmeric. The active compound, curcumin, is a natural inhibitor of inflammatory pathways. Studies have shown it can reduce pain and increase mobility comparable to some over-the-counter anti-inflammatories.
Without the side effects.
Without the associated GI side effects. Ginger is another potent option. Integrating these daily is a simple culinary way to reduce that systemic inflammatory load.
And crucially, this pillar involves elimination just as much as introduction.
They must be reduced drastically or eliminated. Sugar and processed foods are the main culprits. And of course, if you did that self-test we suggested and confirmed that nightshades are a personal trigger, you have to be disciplined about it. Use your diet to calm your body down.
All right, pillar 4. This one is sometimes tragically overlooked because it seems passive, but it is deeply, profoundly active.
It's the most critical recovery phase.
Quality sleep.
Sleep is not merely rest. It is the single most critical phase for bodily repair, regeneration, and maintenance. While you're asleep, your body executes the majority of its complex repair functions.
So things like cellular turnover, tissue maintenance.
Exactly, and the regulation of those inflammatory chemicals. During deep restorative sleep, your body releases human growth hormone, which is essential for repairing that collagen matrix we discussed earlier.
So sleep is essentially the body's internal maintenance crew coming out to work for the night shift.
That's a perfect analogy. When you're asleep, the body naturally dials down pain perception and focuses energy entirely on healing and structural renewal. Good sleep also helps regulate cortisol, the stress hormone, which is highly pro-inflammatory.
So what happens when that essential recovery phase is chronically compromised?
The consequence of poor sleep is profound. Inadequate rest prevents proper bodily repair. The body literally doesn't have the time or the hormonal resources to fix the microdamage from the day. This accelerates structural breakdown, it exacerbates existing pain, and it makes recovery, well, impossible.
So it's non-negotiable.
If you are struggling with chronic joint pain, prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of continuous quality sleep is non-negotiable. It is perhaps the easiest, yet most powerful healing tool you have.
Finally, let's address that overlooked trigger from earlier head-on with Pillar 5, strategic strength training.
The direct intervention against muscle loss.
Yes. And this needs to be carefully defined because many people over 55 might hear strength training and immediately worry about high risk or injury.
That is a critical point. This pillar is essential for anyone over 50, but it is not about ego lifting. It's crucial to clarify this doesn't mean heavy lifting or training like a young competitive bodybuilder.
So what does it mean?
Strategic strength training means building supportive muscle mass around your critical joints, specifically focusing on the muscles that act as dynamic stabilizers, your quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, and above all, your core for global stability.
Can you walk us through how exactly that muscle support translates into tangible, less joint pain in, say, the knees and hips?
Think of it through the lens of mechanics. Strength training acts like adding advanced, perpetually maintained shock absorbers to your body.
Like that.
Take the knee. Strong quadriceps and strong hamstrings provide dynamic support for the kneecap, and they absorb the ground impact load before that force travels directly into your cartilage. They stabilize the joint so it doesn't wobble or track incorrectly.
And the core?
A strong core, and I mean the entire 360-degree musculature around your spine and pelvis, ensures that your gait and posture are stabilized. This reduces asymmetrical strain on your hips, lower back, and knees. If your core is weak, every step you take puts undue stress on your lower body joints.
So, for our listeners, what are some specific low-risk exercises that build this supportive muscle without requiring a gym membership or risking a deep squat?
We recommend focusing on controlled body weight or light resistance movements. For the knees and hips, the best strategic exercises are things like chair squats.
Just sitting and standing from a chair.
slowly and with control. Also, glute bridges lying on your back and lifting your hips, which activates the glutes and hamstrings with zero compressive load on the knee. And assisted step-ups, using a low, stable step and focusing on controlled movement.
And by doing this,
By strategically strengthening the supportive musculature, you effectively bypass the need for the joint structures themselves to manage the stabilization load. This dramatically slows down the rate of wear and powerfully compensates for any existing cartilage damage. It's the most proactive way to reinforce your aging infrastructure.
that makes profound, complete sense. The combination of these 5 pillars, hydration, low-impact movement, anti-inflammatory nutrition, restorative sleep, and strategic strength, it creates a total environment for healing and protection.
It does. You're addressing the water loss, the protein breakdown, the inflammatory triggers, the sedentary starvation, and the lack of mechanical support, all at once.
A total system approach.
Exactly. So to summarize our key findings today, we established that debilitating joint pain after 55 is not random. It's driven by predictable physiological processes,
Cartilage dehydration, collagen breakdown, and systemic inflammation.
triggered by dietary choices, sedentary habits, excessive load, and inevitable muscle loss. By focusing on these 5 pillars, you stop reacting to the pain and you start actively taking control of the mechanics of your longevity.
And we must reiterate that foundational truth.
Joint pain is common, statistically widespread, but our data confirms unequivocally that it is not your destiny. Your future mobility is highly influenced by the intentionality of these choices, starting today.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means your joints have carried you successfully this far. And by understanding these precise mechanics and diligently applying the structural approach in these 5 pillars, they can carry you much, much further. The ultimate goal isn't just surviving the aches and managing the discomfort. It's about moving freely, with confidence and joy, at 70, 80, and even 90, without constant limitations. It's about giving your body the specialized support and fuel it needs to keep up with the vigorous life you still intend to lead.
And as you embark on incorporating Pillar 5, that strategic strength training, we encourage you to consider this final provocative thought. Since muscle loss accelerates the problem of joint wear and strengthening the muscles provides those critical shock absorbers, how might intentional protein timing around those strength training sessions amplify the benefits of Pillar 5?
Ooh, that's interesting.
If muscle is the ultimate shock absorber and it requires high-quality protein to grow and repair, how can you ensure your body is building and maintaining that muscle mass as efficiently as possible immediately post-exercise to maximize that stabilization factor for long-term joint protection? That is the next level of optimizing joint longevity we encourage you to explore.